album. The partially decomposed body of 34-year-old Layne Staley was discovered Friday night. Medical examiners identified it during an autopsy Saturday. Authorities have not yet released the cause of death.
Layne Staley was the iconic frontman of Alice in Chains, one of the most influential bands to emerge from the so-called grunge scene of Seattle of the early 90s. With his powerful, honest, and introspective lyrics, Staley helped define the sound of a generation. His distinctive voice and haunting harmonies with guitarist Jerry Cantrell created some of the most memorable songs of that era, from Man in the Box to Rooster to No Excuses. Despite the band's massive commercial success, though, Staley and the band struggled with drug and alcohol dependency. Sadly for Layne, his addiction got the better of him, resulting in him dying at the young age of 34. But his impact on the music world was profound, and his loss was deeply felt by fans and fellow musicians alike. In the years since his death, many artists, including his own bandmates, have paid tribute to the fallen frontman, both through songs and interviews. Today, let's explore some of the most memorable tracks that were written about Layne Staley. Let's start with the song from Staley's own band and probably the most obvious pick, Black Gives Way to Blue. The song is the title track from Alice in Chains' 2009 album, their first without Staley and with new member William Duvall. Do yourself a favor and go check out the piano mix version of the song on YouTube. Written by guitarist Jerry Cantrell, it's a deeply emotional farewell to his friend and bandmate. Cantrell even recruited Elton John to play piano on the track. John was Layne's first concert as a child, while Cantrell's first album he purchased as a kid was Elton John's 1974 Greatest Hits album. The lyrics to the song are even printed on the bass plate of Jerry's signature Cry Baby Wah Wah pedal. The song's lyrics speak of loss and slowly moving forward. Cantrell, in doing press for the album, admitted that months before he wrote the song, he was pretty ill, admitting to Guitar World, "I got deathly ill. I had these mystery migraines, intense physical pain, and I'd even gotten a spinal tap to test for certain things. They never could find anything wrong with me. I felt I was puking up all this undigested grief and losing Layne." Once Jerry started writing the music for Black Gives Way to Blue, his illness suddenly disappeared. The title track was the first song written for the album, but it was actually the last track recorded for the record and is the last song on Black Gives Way to Blue. Cantrell admitted that it was one of the heaviest songs he'd ever written, and he added, telling Metal Hammer, "That song really set it in stone because we had to properly address Layne's death and say goodbye to our friend. We had done it privately, but if we were going to do this, we had to do it publicly. It's a beautiful song, and it's really tough for me to listen to." We'll come back to some other Alice in Chains songs later on in this video, but let's talk about some other bands. Layne Staley's body was discovered on April 19, 2002 in his apartment during a wellness check by police officers. It's estimated that he died 2 weeks earlier on April 5th, coincidentally the same day that Nirvana's Kurt Cobain died, albeit 8 years apart. When the news media reported Layne's death, it happened on or around April 20th to the 22nd. Pearl Jam frontman Eddie Vedder wrote the song 42002 as a tribute to his fallen friend. April 20th represents the day Vedder heard about the news. Vedder, with his lyrics, took aim at those who imitated Layne in more modern rock bands. Sad to think of him alone. The song is a hidden track from Pearl Jam's 2003 compilation album Lost Dogs. Guitarist Mike McCready gave his thoughts on the song in the book Pearl Jam 20, stating, "I think the reason it's hidden is because Eddie wouldn't want it to be exploitative. I think he wants it to be hidden, so you have to find it and think about it." The Florida rock band Cold released their third and most commercially successful album with 2003's Year of the Spider. On that record is the song The Day Seattle Died, which pays tribute to both Staley and Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain.
The needle became your queen, drug had become your enemy.
Cold frontman Scooter Ward ended up meeting Layne during the frontman's so-called reclusive years in 1998. Ward sat down with Songfacts, admitting that he met Layne on Halloween in Seattle. He told the website he asked Jerry Cantrell if he could arrange a meeting with one of his musical idols. He told the website all of a sudden a little dude comes up and he's got an old fishing hat on and he's kind of dressed up like an old dude. He's dressed for Halloween. I guess he didn't want people to see him because he's Layne Staley. And that would draw a lot of attention. So he got a little costume. He came backstage with me and it impacted me so deeply to see him in that condition because he was one of my biggest idols of all time. The frontman went on to add that seeing Layne in the condition that he was in affected him deeply. Ward remarked how after that night, he knew the end was near for Layne. After releasing the song, Ward even admitted that Layne's mom, Nancy, reached out to him to thank him for penning the song. The track was originally just called Kurt, but Cold decided to change the name to shed more light on Layne's passing, since the media at the time of his death seemed apathetic to the news. Zakk Wylde's band Black Label Society included a tribute song called Layne on their 2004 album Hangover Music Volume 6. As Wylde was asked about the song during an interview with Sea of Tranquility, he admitted, "I wrote it as a tribute to Layne, wondering what was going on in his head. I've never done heroin in my life. It must be a really dark fucking place, man. I like drinking fucking beers and we go out. That whole drug thing, I've never done it. I just put myself in Layne's headspace when I wrote lyrics for that thing." The song also includes a pretty haunting knocking sound at the end, which some have interpreted as being the police knocking on Staley's door when his body was found. Zakk Wylde toured with Alice in Chains when he was playing with Ozzy in the early 90s. There's another song named Layne, and this one comes from the group Stained, who was also hugely influenced by Alice in Chains. The song is found on Stained's 2003 album 14 Shades of Grey. On the day Staley died, Aaron Lewis's daughter Zoe Jane was born. Lewis has frequently performed Alice in Chains songs in concert as well. Canadian band Theory of a Dead Man recorded the song Shadow about Layne fading away. The song was included as a bonus track from their 2008 album Scars and Souvenirs. Metallica has had a weird relationship with Alice in Chains. If you guys remember, Alice was supposed to tour with the band in summer of '94, but the band had to back out. Metallica frontman James Hetfield mocked Layne on stage during one of those shows in '94.
Why did you throw that at me? I have a question. Why did you throw that at me?
Hetfield joined the band on stage in 2006 to perform the song Wood. During this period of time, Metallica were writing and recording their album Death Magnetic. Metallica remarked in an interview how they hung up a picture of Layne in the studio, with Hetfield admitting, "The theme of our new album is that we're all gonna die sometime. Just like the poles of a magnet. Some people are drawn to death and others are repulsed by it, but we all have to deal with it." Lyrically, it started out as a bit of a tribute to Layne Staley and all those who have martyred themselves in the name of rock and roll, but it grew and evolved from there. In a separate interview with Rolling Stone, Hetfield added, "I know Jerry Cantrell quite well and learned about Layne through him. I could see some of the things Jerry went through to keep that band together. I started writing a song around a Layne Staley type. A rock and roll martyr magnetized by death. Why did he choose that path? Someone with such talent." The resulting song was Just a Bullet Away that was eventually left off Death Magnetic, but it was released a few years later on Metallica's 4-song EP Beyond Magnetic. The band A Perfect Circle released the song The Outsider on their sophomore record, 2003's 13th Step. The song was penned by the band's vocalist Maynard James Keenan, who was friends with Layne. The song is written from the perspective of someone who fails to empathize or understand someone's self-destructive behavior. The Outsider was released as a single and peaked at number 79 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and number 3 on the mainstream rock tracks chart. One of Layne's close personal friends was Mark Lanigan of Screaming Trees. Screaming Trees and Alice had toured together back when Alice was promoting their Dirt album. While most of the songs I've covered were written after Layne passed, the Lanigan song Last One in the World was written 4 years before his death. The song can be found on Lanigan's third solo album, 1998's Scraps at Midnight. The lyrics are honestly so heartbreaking and sadly foreshadow Layne's eventual demise. Lanigan even sang the song at Layne's funeral. The former Screaming Trees frontman remarked about the track, "Last One in the World wasn't written about Kurt Cobain as some have speculated, but for my friend Layne Staley, who was still living at the time. I love them both as family. Kurt like a little brother, Layne like a twin." Another Lanigan song about Layne is the track Waited Tomorrow. The song is found on the Houston Publishing Demos 2002. Lanigan has talked about the song, remarking, "A song I wrote and recorded my last night in town," referring to Houston, where the Houston Publishing Demos were recorded, upon receiving the devastating news that Layne Staley had died.
Can't find my way to tomorrow.
Let's now circle back to Alice in Chains. Going back to their Black Gives Way to Blue album, there's 2 songs that could be about Layne. I say maybe because it's never been officially confirmed who these songs were about. My first pick is Your Decision, which is one of my favorite songs off the album and one of my favorite Alice songs of all time. In an interview that frontman William Duvall gave, he stated the song is about choices and consequences. It could be about the members' own addictions and problems, and it could also even be about their former bassist Mike Starr, who also died of an overdose.
It's your decision.
Your Decision was issued as a single, and it did quite well, topping the Billboard Hot Rock Songs chart and mainstream rock tracks chart. It also went to number 4 on the alternative songs chart. Another single from the album was the track Lesson Learned, which peaked at number 10 on the US Hot Rock and Alternative Songs chart. This song could also be about Layne or even Mike Starr. There's references about hitting a vein and striking a nerve. Moving on to their follow-up record, 2013's The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. The song Voices, which was also released as a single and did quite well, and peaked at number 3 on the US mainstream rock tracks chart. While the lyrics echo dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome, it could also refer to dealing with the loss of both Mike Starr and Layne Staley, and the video even features a photo of Layne and Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. Moving on to their follow-up and most recent record, 2018's Rainier Fog, the song Never Fade Away was partially inspired by Staley. William Duvall told Kerrang, "I think there was some residue from the past lingering. But the ghosts were benevolent. They were there to help, not hinder. I wrote the lyrics to the song Never Fade. I was thinking about my grandmother who just died a few months earlier, thinking about Layne Staley, thinking about Soundgarden's Chris Cornell who just passed a month before, just letting it wash over." The title track of the album was also partially inspired by Layne and Mike Starr, with Jerry telling Classic Rock magazine, "That's Layne and Mike, Mr. Staley and Mr. Starr. They're still with us. I just started writing and it ended up being about where you come from and who you are." And finally, let's talk about Jerry's solo record from 2002, Degradation Trip, the album which was recorded just before Layne passed away. It features a song called Bargain Basement Howard Hughes. One strange coincidence is that Howard Hughes, who was also a famous recluse, died on April 5th, the same day Layne died as well. Jerry talked in interviews about living in isolation during the recording of the album. By the end of Layne's life, it seemed like Jerry and his relationship with Layne had soured, and judging by the song's lyrics, it seems like Jerry's regretting how things ended. That concludes today's video, guys. Are there any songs that I missed that should be on the list? Let me know in the comment section below, and we'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.